Come and reminisce with us. This is 90s Till Infinity.
It's Gav here from the guy who brought you BRL. 90s Till Infinity walks you down the road of the best decade ever, the 90s. Catch 90s Till Infinity on Mixcloud or a radio station near you, or find us at 90s Till Show on Facebook and Instagram.
Coastal Feel. 90s Till Infinity. Keeping it retro. Reminisce with us.
Blood stains the ground. BRL, son.
Peace, this is Nelson Dialect. You're tuned in to Beats, Rhymes and Live.
This is ISB. You're listening to BRL.
Yo, this is Ray. You're listening to BRL.
What up? It's 360.
Yeah. This is Nick Loopy from One Day Spit Syndicate. I'm Seth Century. You're on Beats, Rhymes and Life, and I endorse this product.
Peace, family. This is Alfred the Lion on Beats, Rhymes and Life. Stay tuned. This is where hip hop lives.
It is Beats, Rhymes, and Life. And joining us on the phone, we've been building you up for three things, and I think you're going to balk at the introduction I'm about to give you. But I'd say pioneer, legend, and I'd say you're probably an icon of Australian hip-hop at this point. Urthboy, welcome back to BRL.
Thanks for having me. I don't think I would ever use those words myself, but thanks for the introduction. It's good to chat to you.
The intro is something of a motif of mine. I don't know how I do it. It's just so I can just pull some stuff to the top of my head, and that's what came top of my head just then. So there you go. I don't write that.
Off we go. Yeah, all good.
I don't write this stuff down, by the way. I really don't.
I feel you. I feel you.
But it's good to have you back, and it's also good to have you back on tracks as well. It's been a few years since the last record that I recall, but new one on the way, and it's definitely more of a mature vibe. Of course, we're all getting older, like tracks like How Far We've Come, like that song really hit me in the feels. It did. I'm just like, and maybe for the different message or whatever, but I actually thought of it in the way of like the 20 years worth of being involved in the Australian hip hop scene, because you have been, the Herds record dropped 20 years ago at this point. So it's just like, bro, we have come a long way. Yeah, for sure. Look, it's been a while, and yes, it is longer between drinks when it comes to putting out records, just for all sorts of reasons. I guess most people can probably relate to the way that life kind of gets away from you, whether that be family or work. And as you get a bit older, you get a little bit less indulgent time where you can just have space to kind of luxuriate. I mean, at the time when I'm younger, you don't think that you're luxuriating, but as you get a bit older, of course, your concept of time changes a little bit in the obligations that you've got. So that changes. It makes it a little bit more of a challenge to work out how much of a priority music is. And of course, if you do music, you have to be really selfish. Yes.
That's the only real way to dedicate time and sacrifice other things in your life in order to prioritize the music. So at some point along the way, that compelling need to be an artist has to be, balanced with how important it is to be a dad, or how important it is to, do the work that you're doing. And how far this record is, I guess it is more mature, and you're right. Like, we get older and you can't just go and make music like maybe what made heaps of sense to you when you were younger. You start thinking a little bit deeply, or not even deeply, but just differently.
Yes. And
the priorities in your life, the things that are important, those, they come to the surface. And for example, you say, it got me in the field. I think like that's the most fascinating thing to me about music now, is like, how do you make people feel something? Like, and I don't really know, but that's, to me, the ultimate. I don't want to just make angry macho music to fire you up. I mean, I'd love to. I'm just not that good at it. And there's so many people that are really good at it. And so let them take the ball and run with it. But for me, my objective is different now. And I want to write music that feels more
that it connects with where I am at mentally, where I'm at emotionally, and what sort of things are important to me now. So, yeah, that's something that I understand is a bit of a distinction in the way that I make music now to how I may have once made it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's that's really the definition of keeping it real. What you've just said, it is keeping it real. It's like, well, you're a dad, you're a business owner, you've got all that going on, yeah, and I can relate in quite a few ways now. You know, I've got a toddler myself these days, and yeah, most of the time, any of the free time really mostly goes to him. I'll still make time for this show, but the times where I'd sit in a radio studio for like a day, just like coming up with ideas and whatever. No, those are long gone, and they're not coming back.
Yeah.
I now actually use quiet time as my job to plan, but you know, it's it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, these things are still. It's an interesting way that, you know, the things that occupy our time come and go, and what I've found is that nothing really has to have an absolute end point. You know, things can finish.
Yes.
And they can be picked back up. And things that are important to you. I mean, I played a lot of sport when I was younger, and then music took over, and then music pretty much became my entire. It took all of my time, and so sport took a big back seat. And as I've gotten a bit older, I've really, like in the last 10 years, I mean, I've like picked up a lot of sport, and I've gone back there, and I think that's because there's something inherently interesting or motivating about sport to me that when I was ready to come back to it, I had all that foundation, and I went back into it with a lot of energy and excitement, you know, like it's important to me. I enjoy it. And I guess like with you and radio, you have to go through periods where it may be not as much of a part of your routine as it once was.
Yes.
And that's because other things that are, you know, things you can't drop. You can't drop some of the responsibilities that you got as a dad.
Yes. So
it's a real simple sort of equation there, but these things, the things that are important to you, they do tend to sort of weave in and out of your life. And, you know, some of my mates in the herd taught me that best, you know.
Yes.
I would sometimes think in absolutes, you know, you something goes wrong, you take drastic, you know, measures, you address it, you know, you maybe, you know, lose your shit, whatever it is that makes you feel like you have to act in a particular type of way, but actually just taking a bit of a deep breath and looking at the situation and realizing that maybe the way that you're seeing that thing is not the full picture, and the full picture is sometimes pretty startling. You know, it kind of takes you by surprise. You're like, oh, hang on, my whole way of measuring the right decision in this one kind of context,
yes,
is maybe just because I've got some childhood shit that just is triggered, and I don't know how to deal with this difficult conflict or something. So I lash out the same way I deal with all my problems, you know. And then you realize, oh, actually, like there's a whole other way. Like we're holistic people, and there's a whole bunch of us that ourselves that's incomplete.
Yes.
And so, yeah, you know, like not necessarily needing to know everything or needing to kind of treat everything as if it's like it's life or death gives you a little bit of a different perspective, and you can make space just for things to come back into your life, you know?
You've just literally spoken to like the last 3 years of my life right there. The whole pandemic thing slowed everything down. I'd already made some changes, but like if you spoke to me like 5 years ago, that reactionary, always getting into an argument, always having to win, all that kind of stuff, which I still have. You know, still have plenty of that. There's always that. There's always the male ego kind of thing of like, how dare you, blah, 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 blah. You have disrespected me, all that kind of stuff. And then you just take a breather and go, no, most of this is like getting into some kind of troll comment or something like that, or having scraps with community radio management, that kind of stuff, or people below you in that tree, something like that. A bit of an overshare right now, but getting rid of all of that and just sort of concentrating on what's actually important, like,
yeah.
All right, cool.
Sure.
I will get rid of that complete management side of the thing. I'll leave that radio station. We'll start BRL as a national form, which was kind of luck and timing at the same time. And I'm much happier for it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's good.
Cut out the toxicity, and I mean that just it turned out perfect. By the way, this part of the interview I'll make a podcast version, not a radio version. I'll keep your answer because it's perfect. But you just hit me right in the feels once again, Tim. You're thinking on a level that I just finally achieved in like the last 12 months.
I mean, this is a constant evolution, right? Like, I just keep on, I've always been curious, and curiosity is the reason why I keep on making music and keep on doing things. And without saying this in an egotistical way, it's the same. I think it's a big explanation for why I'm still very active, and a lot of people have had to give up, music and let go, is because I have a very strong and tenacious kind of sense of curiosity for this stuff. And I always look at new things that I haven't experienced or things that I haven't done well enough. And I keep on wanting to go, kept me going in a lot of ways. But actually, whether it be in an emotional sense, in a relationship sense, or in a work sense, or in music, or whatever it may be, there's always new things to discover. And if you're open and you're honest and you're kind of genuinely committed to having that growth, I guess you say, is you always find out stuff about yourself that is maybe unwelcome or uncomfortable, and if you really want to tackle it, you go ahead and go, okay, well, I'm going to do the work on it. So, we're constantly evolving, and, when I'm constantly curious about what comes next and what the new learning is, So.
Indeed, and that goes into another point. 'Cause, as I mentioned before, 20th anniversary of An Elephant Never Forgets was a couple of weeks ago, and it's got me sort of thinking about 20 years ago, and a lot of reminiscing on my part of those were the good old days, sitting in the studio, place had a weird smell to it, but we were just playing stuff like you guys, and Downside were just about to drop an album, all that kind of stuff. And then you think of 20 years later, and there's not many of those contemporaries left, and especially as a label. It's wild that basically it's you and Hydrofunk, and I'd say you guys are a bit more active in that regard. You're the last one standing. Would you say that's because of that tenacity?
A good question. Someone said that to me the other day. They were like, sorry, I'm just washing hands. You can hear that in the background. Just going to talk you through it.
Oh, good.
Commentating the washing of hands. Came back from football. That's week dinner. Hey, someone mentioned it to me the other day and said, "Oh, look, you guys are the oldest indie hip hop label." And I thought about it, and it's like, well, yeah, there's Hydrofunk, and I was thinking about it. It hadn't occurred to me that was something that had that moment had passed us, and I guess we don't really think about those types of achievements. It's more about what is the value that we offer and what is the role that we play in artists' lives, and is there a relevance for us? And there's definitely been a lot of times where I've questioned that, and I've wondered whether, what we do is of value to the community. And I think at different times I can see, well, there's lots of value that we bring. And then there's other times where I'm like, well, there's a distinction between some sort of a tokenistic, nice feeling about a label that sticks around for a long time. But no one cares. No one really cares. Like, it doesn't really matter to people. It doesn't have an actual tangible effect on people's lives. It's just a nice feeling. Oh, there's a label that has kind of done this. So the question is not about getting a little, cookie for lasting so long in this really difficult music industry. It's like, well, what are we doing now that is actually bringing new value to the table? And that's something that we have to ask ourselves all the time. I'm constantly talking to myself and going, we can't rest on our laurels. We can't just sit here and pull up some old statistic of something that we've done and go, well, and that's not always something that the whole team shares. Different people have different perspectives. But my view is very firmly that if we don't continue to evolve and lead, and lead in our own way, then we should just pass the baton on, and there's lots of different ways that you can lead, and there's lots of different ways that you can evolve, and there's lots of mistakes that you make in that process. And we make mistakes as we go, and there's definitely been, we're a very imperfect label, but at the same time, I do know that lasting 25 years is hectic. And in this industry, it's absolutely ruthless and cutthroat. And all of our competitors have got, much deeper pockets than us, much bigger staffing levels, much more extensive international connections. So we're very much like the little guy in this changing world. So really, there is moments where I'm actually just reflect, and I'm proud of that. That is something that we've withstood multiple phases in this music field and in the culture of hip hop and the way that it's grown and developed in this country. And we've managed to sort of navigate through so many different pretty testing moments, none more testing than the last 3 or 4 years, but hey, we're still here.
Yeah. We're all still here. It's wild. And I can't claim 25 years. I can maybe say 21, but then you take away the 10 years of not doing this show, and then it's close to 12. But I still call it.
Either way, at some point, you're a person who has acted with integrity and has contributed positively to the culture. And whether that's 6 months or a year, or whether that's 20 years, we all make up the thing moving forward, and I am just as inspired by people that had just sprung up into the culture as I am veterans, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, especially if you contribute. And there's different ways to contribute now than there was 20 years ago. As now, it's a completely different game. It's
fully
completely different game. And probably ways I couldn't understand because I never ran a label, but you sort of get a look from that third row view, as I like to say I have, of this scene, and it's completely changed. It's a different world in a billion different ways. But
I think one of the biggest things with labels here is a lot of the time artists have started them here, like hip hop labels.
Oh, right.
And
true.
I mean, and that's one of the biggest challenges, is that a lot of artists start them with grand ambitions for being able to turn around and do a better job that other people had done for them, and they want to kind of build from that point. But then a lot of artists find it extremely challenging egotistically, because you have to humble yourself. As soon as you are behind the scenes, you're working for another artist, and a lot of artists have trouble with that, because a lot of artists go into that situation with a lot of authority and a lot of connections, and either they start up a label with as a subsidiary to a major,
yes,
and they've got they're bankrolled for a little while, but then at some point they have to cop shit from an artist who's pissed off because they haven't done a good job, and it's pretty difficult for artists. This is why the role of the teams around an artist who do that label work is really valuable, you know, and people do a good job, people do a bad job, like anything. Like, you know, there are people who are really, you know, have their heart in the right place, but terribly organized. There are other people who just want to make a buck, but actually really know how to put a spreadsheet together. These people all have value on some sort of a level. In the real world, it's not just like black and white. It's not just like you're a good person who really loves the culture. You're a bad person. You don't love the culture. You know, sometimes different roles are needed to be, you know, different roles are needed to be played for the thing to work. And, you know, that's one of the interesting things with a lot of labels that started up for artists, and I feel for them because I've gone through it. I've gone through it multiple times. And you know, luckily I've always been semi-committed to it. And so I've just sort of, I've had to move and do soul searching through that, humbling. But it's rarely celebratory, you know what I mean? Like it's rarely like a glamorous side of the business running the indie label. It's usually just lots of no's, lots of rejection. Yeah. Just constantly.
Yeah. Wild. It's completely wild. It's something that I could never do. Like I thought about putting together a compilation a couple of years ago, like, you know, Culture of Kings style, you know, like let's bring those back kind of deal. Seven Sails are actually about to do it, but yeah, I was thinking, I've got the connections. This could happen really easy. And then I just got told about just some of the work that you'd have to do. And I'm like, at this stage, I'm like, Mrs. is pregnant. I don't have time for this anymore. Yeah. And that was just like looking at just the back end, like sorting out the fees, like just in case it actually made a profit and you could maybe pay people who wanted to be involved in some kind of way and even, like, you know, do the right thing by the artist. But just the back end paperwork alone, I was like, nah, bro.
For sure. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe there's a time where you might change your mind, but yeah, it is. Yeah.
It would be kind of cool. I still think it's a pretty cool idea, but, you know, I'll let people who've had a lot more experience do that. So, you know, shouts to the Seven Sails boys from Adelaide. So, now let's talk about the actual sound of the record. And I've got one more question, which I think will be near and dear to both of our hearts, but we'll save that for the back end. So who produced this record? Like it's got a completely different sound to a lot of your previous work. So, yeah, who's behind the boards there?
Hey, so you were asking about the producers. So I worked with for the first half of the record with a guy called I Am Solo and, funnily enough, a guy called Sulo. Yes. I Am Solo is like much more of a new school guy where it produces a whole bunch of 1/4 stuff, produces a whole bunch of nookie stuff, and he's really kind of in that new school lane. Really interesting artist. Loved working with him. And Sulo from The Herd, so I've got a long relationship with him, love him, he's one of my best mates. I've worked with a guy called RFP, which is a producer from Melbourne called Rory, really good, talented producer. Right. Nick Martin, who did Second Heartbeat and The Arrow, is on this record, a couple of beats. And then it all came together with Pip Norman, who I've worked with on every single record of mine. He's not so much of a hip hop guy. He produced The Signal back in the day. All right. But on every single record of mine, he's either come in as a producer, just producing beats, or he's executive produced and sort of overseen a lot of the process, and we've collaborated and written together on it. So those are the key people involved.
Right. So, a whole mix of folks, and that reflect across the whole record as well?
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I mean, I don't really have a scientific process when it comes to choosing beats and how to go about it. I just respond to things that I connect with, and I'm trying to constantly break into new spaces sonically, and I'm always wanting to go into the next thing and find something new and I don't want to just repeat myself.
Yep.
I mean, funnily enough, a lot of my fans just want me to keep into a pretty consistent lane. So most of the times where I do really try and break out of it, it's generally not, it's not always like commercially successful decisions, but creatively as an artist, I got to kind of, you just got to do something that makes you tick.
Yes.
And so sometimes I'm making music and it's just crickets, people say, oh yeah, it's all right, But yeah, the new record's kind of a balance. It's probably not as new school as where I was going.
All right.
And I mean, if I could have gone further there, I would have. But it's just the way that the songs came together. When I finally did put the album playlist together, I was like, these songs just work together. So I do feel like it's somewhat of a coherent body of work.
Outstanding. So people will be able to grab this through the pre-orders and such, because we're airing this weekend. So I'll do the pre-order. Pre-order's still available up until day of, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've got a real limited edition pressing of the vinyl, and we made this journal, like custom-made journal and T-shirt. So when you're putting records together, you sort of have to create a bigger story, and part of that is the pre-order package, and you make a bunch of limited edition things that you're not going to work on again, so you try and mark the occasion.
Absolutely. I'm literally on the page now looking at all the different packages. There's a whole bunch. You can get pretty much anything, any kind of style of package that you want. There's like 10 or 12 here. So definitely go and hit up that pre-order and go cop the Saviour LP. And by the way, one last question before you go.
Yep.
Last year in September, me and you had a bad Saturday afternoon.
Oh, I don't want to talk about it. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. How do you think this year's going to go?
Quietly optimistic. I mean, all the stats say when you get pumped in a granny, you're going to have a flat next year. So that's what everyone's saying.
Yeah.
So now I guess, we've got a point to prove. Hopefully anyway. I
hope it isn't St Kilda in that regard. 2010 team that died of a broken heart kind of deal. It's like, because
yeah. Well, I was at that game.
Oh, you were there. Oh, no.
At the granny last year with my daughter. It was a pretty average day.
Oh, bro. I was not a good supporter. I just went, I can't watch this. I watched 2014, and that was that was bad enough. Mrs. made me watch the whole thing of that. 2016 up until about halfway through that fourth quarter, we were right there, and and then getting absolutely just annihilated like last year. I was like, can I win one again? I know just one, but I'd prefer to just delete the last 10 years and just remember 2012 then.
Yeah, for sure. It was like we were shell shocked. Anyway, anything's up from there, right?
Yeah, so come on, Swannies, let's do this.
Indeed. I'll tag you in next time we have a great win over the Cats.
Yes, yeah, let's. It won't mean as much, but I'd like to absolutely just crush them this year. Just do them in their home ground. Actually, we do tend to beat them in Geelong as well. So
we've had a pretty good record against them too. Yeah, just for sure.
Yeah. I guess they're like, we'll take that. That was for 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick
we needed a Nick Davis and an Adam Goods and a whole bunch of those people for that.
Yeah, we needed 42 players too, I reckon.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a bad day. But, go Swannies.
Indeed. Right there.
Anyway, the album Saviour is available as of next week. Pre-order is available at Elephant Track's website pretty much.
That's the one. Yep.
Indeed.
ElephantTrack.com. Hit it up.
A whole bunch of packages there, so definitely go and get it. And we'll play a track from the upcoming record right now here on BRL. Thanks for your time.
Hey, thanks for the chat, man. Great to chat.
Dropping EDM, hip-hop, and a bunch of best beats programs around. If you want bangers, you'll be in the right place with Tune One. Tune1.com.au. That's tune1.com.au. Tune One, proud show sponsor.